Okay, exercise 8.4 is a direct labor budget, and I think the hardest part about this is reading a problem that is poorly worded. Well, the first says to assume that the direct labor workforce is adjusted each quarter. In other words, in real world, they're not a union shop and they only use the labor they need. There's no requirements for them to hire more or hire less or minimum workloads or anything like that. So each quarter they can use just as much labor as they need and no more. Well, that's their production budget for the first, second, third, and fourth quarter. We're told that each unit takes 4/10 of an hour, not 40 minutes, 4/10 of an hour, okay? 40% of an hour. 40% of 60 is 24 minutes, okay? Don't make that mistake. Everything in orange is just copying the information out of the text. The first computation, and the computations are in green, says how many labor hours are going to be needed, assuming that they can buy just what they need. Well, that's the computation, and it's just the hours times units, okay? The labor cost per hour is the piece that folks can forget, because once you get one sum, you don't realize you have to keep going. You need to be able to plan for hours and for dollars. So we take the hours that we computed times the dollars that were given, and that gives us the cost. So that's assuming that the budget can be, or that the workforce is non-unionized, non-contractual, and that you can use just exactly what you need. Now, a more common scenario, and it's either good or bad depending on how you feel about unions, is where there are some contractual arrangements, and that's in the second one. And here it's the same. We still have to make the same units, and that number is given to us up above. So we're still making the same number of units. But now we have various contracts that we can't avoid. It says that workers have to be paid for at least 1,800 hours. It says anything under that, they're still paid for 1,800. Anything over that, they're paid 1.5 times their normal rate. So we're going to need both of those numbers. It's still 4/10 of an hour per unit. That hasn't changed. Now, we still have the same number that we had up above when we computed the hours needed. But I need to draw your attention to a couple of things. Remember, over 1,800 hours, we pay overtime. Under 1,800 hours, we still have to pay 1,800. And at 1,800, everything remains exactly the same as it did in the prior problem. So we need that 1,800 hours. Again, anything in orange is directly out of the textbook, okay? So let's see how many overtime hours we're going to have to pay. We're going to need to pay overtime hours for here. And I highlighted that in blue. That should have been in pink. And here. So now let's do the computation. So we have the same computation for regular hours, okay, because we have to pay 1,800 hours at $11 per hour. We also have to now consider the overtime hours, 200 at 11 times 1.5. Now there's two ways you can do that. You can multiply the 200 times the 1.5 times the 11, or you can just say 300 times 11, or you can say 200 times 1650. Any way you like gives you the numbers. The easiest way is simply to string them together, the overtime, the hours. So 200 times 11 times 1.5. And that gives you the overtime hours. And then we have the final computation. Because remember, we need to come up with dollars. And that's the purpose of this. Remember that when we're dealing with people's lives and people's salaries, we have to deal in whole numbers, and we're often subject to contractual agreements.